Hello everyone, my name is Shailaja, Faculty of English. Today we are going to discuss about one of the important English grammar topics, that is active voice and passive voice. Let's get started. In every sentence, we have to observe subject, verb, object. Okay, here also two sentences are there. If we observe subject, verb, object we have. Okay, in this sentence we have subject, verb, object. This is active voice. So in active voice sentence, what is happening here? Helps is the verb. This is also called action. So the action is done by the subject. So the subject done the action. What is subject here? Rama. Okay. First of all, we have to understand that active voice, in active voice, the subject is always does the action. Okay. So this is active voice. Then this is passive voice sentence. Here also we have subject, verb, object. Okay. And extra one more by. So if you observe this sentence, subject, verb, object. This is passive voice. Okay. In this passive voice sentence, the action is received by the subject. We have discussed the action is done by the subject in active voice, but the action is received by the subject in passive voice. So that is the difference between them. Okay. So in active voice, we have to observe the action is done by the subject, and in the passive voice, we have to observe the action is received by the subject. Okay. The main focus is on the receiver and the action in passive voice. Then, are there any differences in those sentences? Yes, we have observed the structure of the sentences is different, but the meaning is same. So, that is the main focus on the sentences. In active voice and passive voice, the meaning is same. Okay, but we have to change the sentences without changing the meaning. Okay, without changing the meaning, but the structure is changed. If you observe, without changing the meaning of the sentences, we need to change the active sentences into passive sentences. That is the main motto of active voice and passive voice. Clear? Then, okay, till here the difference between active sentence and passive sentence. Okay, that is the basic difference. Then, these are the two different types of sentences. Then, what can we change all the sentences into passive forms? Obviously, no. Because, what is the reason? Because we have to identify the sentences whether the verb is transitive or intransitive. Verb is transitive or intransitive means, what do you mean by transitive? What do you mean by intransitive? Let us discuss now. Transitive verbs. Transitive verbs, each of the sentence, the action is denoted by the verbs, passes over from the subject or doer, to the objects. Such verbs are called transitive verbs. Okay, by the example we can understand. If you take this example, he writes short stories. Here, he is a subject. Writes is verb. Short stories, object. So, he writes short stories. In this sentence, we have subject, verb, object. Okay. What is happening here? In this sentence, the action, whatever the action is there, that action is passes from the subject to the object. Okay. These kind of, what is the definition for transitive verbs? From the action is passes from the subject to the object. Okay. then the verb will be transitive verb. The verb will be transitive verb. So these kind of sentences along with the subject and the verb, along with the subject and the object, the verb will be the transitive verbs. Okay, and one more example, Geeta is learning English. Geeta is learning English. Here also the action is passes from the subject to the object. Okay, from the subject to the object. Whenever we have the subject and the object along with the verb, so that verb will be the transitive verb. Okay, so whenever we have the sentence, that sentence must have subject and the verb. Okay, that action is passes from the subject to the object. Those objects are in the sentence give the support to the action. So that action is very important. Okay, so the subject passes the action to the object. So we need subject and object also. Whenever we have the subject and object in the sentence, we can make the passive form of sentences by using the transitive verbs. One more time. Okay, writes is the verb. Okay, with the help of the verb, the subject passes the action to the object. Okay, here the action is denoted by the verbs, passes over from the subject or the doer to the object, passes over from the subject to the object. So these verbs are called transitive verbs. Okay, these transitive verbs, whatever the transitive verbs are there, these transitive verbs, whatever the transitive verbs are there in the sentences, these are transitive verbs. These transitive verbs can be changed into passive form of verbs. Okay, so this is about transitive verbs. What then? How about intransitive verbs? Let us see now. Intransitive verbs. We have discussed we need subject, verb, object in the sentence. The verb will be transitive verb. That verb can be changed into passive form of verbs. Okay. Now, transitive verbs are the action of the verb does not passes over from the doer or the subject to an object. Such verbs which do not have objects are called intransitive verbs. Intransitive verbs means, if you see the example, Raju came. Okay, we have a subject, we have a verb. What about the object? There is no object in the sentence. Okay, so this is incomplete sentence. There is no information about the object. If we don't know about the object's information, what do? Can we make a sentence? Can we make a sentence in passive form? Let us see now. So, what is happening here? Here, came is a verb. The verb is an action. So, this action is done by Raju. But, okay, this action is done by Raju. But, whatever the definition is there, the definition, the verb not passes over from the doer. Not passes because there is no object here. So that's why the action does not passes from the subject to the object, because the action not completed. So the subject does not pass over. The action does not pass over from the subject to the object because there is no information about the object. Okay. So again, If you see another example, Shweta is sleeping. Shweta subject, sleeping verb. So in this sentence, the subject is Shweta. Okay, is sleeping. Is there any information about the object? There is no information about the object. So what is the action here is sleeping. Is sleeping, but the action is Shweta, subject Shweta, not passing the action to the object because there is no object's information. So in this context, the verb does not passes over from the doer to the object. Okay, so this kind of verbs, whatever the verbs, so this verb is called intransitive verb. Okay, intransitive verb. These verbs are called intransitive verbs. These intransitive verbs cannot be changed into passive form of verbs. Okay, transitive verbs, the sentence which has subject, verb, object, that verbs can be changed into passive form of verbs. But intransitive verbs cannot be changed into passive form of verbs. And one more thing, if you ask a question about what, who, whom, if you ask a question about what, who, whom, with these sentences, you can get the answers, our objects, okay, our receivers. So then we can understand the answers for these questions. If we get the answers for these questions, that sentences can be changed into passive form of verbs. Okay. Then finally we got the information about transitive sentences, transitive verbs, intransitive verbs. Okay, transitive verbs can be changed into passive form of verbs. Intransitive verbs can be changed into passive, does not change into passive form of verbs. Intransitive verbs cannot be changed into passive form of verbs. Okay. Now we are going to discuss about different kinds of situations. What are the situations we use passive form of verbs in our day-to-day life? Okay. Regularly we use active sentences and also passive sentences. But in some cases we use active sentences with the examples also. But passive sentences, we use passive sentences, some exceptional cases. Mostly, what are the exceptional cases? Okay, let us see now. Where to use the passive form of verbs? Where to use the passive form of verbs? Actually, passive form of verbs gives us the option of not mentioning the person or thing responsible for the action. Who is the agent in the sentence? Agent means doer of the action. So, in every sentence, we have the doer of the action. Like that, who is the agent in the sentence? Agent means doer. So, that agent's information, passive form of verb gives us the option of not mentioning the person of the thing responsible for the action. So, the agent's information is hidden. So, that is the facility we have in passive form of sentences. Okay. In passive form of sentences, we can mention sometimes, we cannot mention sometimes about agent's information. Okay, if you see the situations where do we use these passive form of sentences. Okay, let us see now. You can use passive voice for the following reasons. What are the reasons? What are the situations we use? What are the situations we use? Whenever we don't know about who or what the agent is. Agent means, agent is doer of the action. Agent is doer of the action in the sentence. So whenever we don't know about the doer of the action, then we can use passive form of sentences. What are the situations? For example, my purse has been stolen. In the sentence, my purse has been stolen, is there any information about the doer? No. But the main focus is on the action has been stolen and receiver, the purse, my purse. So, in passive sentence, the main focus is on the action and the receiver of the action. There is no information about doer of the action. So, in that case, why don't we have this information? Because we don't know about the thieves information. That purse has been stolen by somebody. By somebody. Who is that somebody? What is the information about somebody? Do we know the information about somebody's? We don't know. So, that's why we haven't mentioned. So, by somebody is better option. But we don't know about the thieves information. In that case, we can use passive voice sentence. Okay. And one more thing, one more example. The poster was removed. Daily we see on the walls outside. Okay. Next day, if you see, the posters were removed. So, this is the situation. So, the poster was removed. Who removed? We don't know. That unknown person. We don't know about the person's information. So, whenever we don't know, that is the clue. Whenever we don't know about the information of that person, we can simply use passive form of sentences. Okay. Next case. If it is not important, not important, who or what the agent is. Agent means doer of the action. If it is not important, if you see the example, we were asked to come early. We were asked to come early. Here also the action is important, the message is important, and we were asked to come early. The receiver, we are the receiver. So, receiver is important. But who asked this? Who asked this? The doer of the action. Who is the doer here? We don't know. So, doer of the action is hidden. But it is not important. The clue is it is not important to mention the doer's information. Because we know very well, we were asked to come early. Who said this? Generally, who will said this? Okay. In that case, we use passive form of sentences. Okay. And if you take glass articles should be handled. Glass articles should be handled carefully. Here also receiver is important. Should be handled carefully. The information about the receiver is important. Action is important. The doer of the action is not mentioned. Because there is no importance of the doer in the sentence. So that's why we can't mention here. So whenever we don't want to give importance to the doer of the action, we can use passive form of sentences. Okay. Next case. If you see, it is obvious who or what the agent is. Obvious. If it is obvious. Obvious means very known things, regular things. We see, we observe. Everybody knows about that. Obvious means. Okay. So obvious who or what the agent is. Okay. If you take the example, the patients are not treated properly in same government hospitals. The patients are not treated properly. Usually who will treat? Who will treat the patients? Patients are treated by doctors only. Then in that case, the patients are not treated properly. So obviously the patients are treated by the doctors. By the doctors. But we don't mention here because that is the obvious situation. Obviously, doctors only treating the patients. Okay. And another situation, classes are held regularly at school. Regularly at school. Classes are held. Classes are held. Held by teachers only. So this is also the obvious. Obvious means we know very well. Okay. In that case, we can use passive form of sentences without mentioning the doer of the action, agent of the action. Okay. And in the next case, the people in general are the agents. People are the agents here. Till now we have discussed the agent is something or somebody. But here the agent is all together. People, all the people. The action is applicable to all the people. Okay. People in general are agents. Okay. Only, for example, only novels are borrowed from this library. Okay. Only novels are borrowed from this library. Generally, novels are borrowed from this library by whom? By the people. Okay. So, who are the agents here? People only. So, what is the information about agent here? People only. So, that is applicable to people. This information is applicable to people. Okay. That's why the agent will be the people here. In this case also, vehicles are not parked. Vehicles are not parked properly on the roads. Vehicles are not parked properly on the roads. So all these things, all these actions, who will do? Obviously, people will do. So who will be the agent? The agent will be our people. The whole people are the agents here. Okay. So in this case, whenever the situations related to the people, we can also use passive form of sentences. In the next case, if you want to hide the identity of the agent, hide. If you want to hide the identity of the agent, So, if you want to hide the identity of the agent means, for example, your friend and you are there, but a chair was broken by your friend, but you don't want to mention it. You don't want to mention it before everybody. So, then you want to hide your friend's information. The action was done by your friend, but you don't want to reveal it. Then you want to hide it. So in that case, you can use passive form of sentences. For example, too many complaints have been given against you. Okay, you are the speaker. Okay, your friend is the listener. Okay, in that case, too many complaints have been given against you. You are telling to your friend, but by somebody, that somebody's information, the agent's information, you don't want to mention. So the agent's information you don't want to mention. You want to hide the identity of the agent. Okay. Next, the senior officer has been chided severely. The senior officer has been chided severely. You know that. Okay. But who's chided means scolded. Who scolded your senior officer? You know that. But you don't want to reveal that information in front of all. Okay. So in that case also we can use passive form of sentences without mentioning the agent's information. Okay. So, and last and foremost case, if you want to remain anonymous, if you take this case, anonymous means unnamed. So if you want to hide your name or if you don't want to mention your name, okay? And sometimes if you do any wrong things, not positive things, in that case also you want to hide your identity. Like that, if you broke anything, if you broke a glass, okay, so you want to hide it, you don't want to reveal it. So in that case you can use passive form of sentences. If you see the example, it has been decided to transfer Mr. Rao. It has been decided to transfer Mr. Rao. Here you are the speaker. You are the speaker here. So you only telling this expression. Okay. This expression is telling by you only. But you don't want to mention it. For example, if you go to ATM center, the card is scratched, the card is put in that and cash is drawn. So these kind of sentences after by me, you don't want to mention it. You know that you are only. Okay. In that case, or if any kind of preparation, for chai or any curries. So in that case also you can use passive voice. Salt is added, sugar is added. In that case also you can use passive voice without mentioning your identity. By me. So like that, this is anonymous. This is the situation of anonymous. Severe action will be taken against the latecomers. This is also the speaker is telling whether it is principal, teacher or any superior. So in the gatherings, in the meetings or in assembly, so he is telling about severe action will be taken against the latecomers. So this is here also the speaker doesn't want to mention his name by me, like that. In that cases also, that is the case of anonymous case, in that case also we can use passive form of sentences. So till here we have discussed what are the situations we can use passive form of sentences. Okay. And from the first active sentence, from the first we have discussed first the difference between the sentences and the intransitive verbs and the situations we can use passive form of verbs. Okay. So this is all today. I hope you all understood. This is all for today. So thanks for watching. Subscribe 5 Mantra Career Point and do like and share my video. Thanks for watching.